Welcome to the Helping Families Be Happy podcast, where we explore the often messy world of family, love, and relationships. I'm your host for this podcast, Adina Oberman, a mom, former preschool teacher, picture book lover, and member of the Familius marketing team. I'm also the creator of Big Books for Little Hands, a site dedicated to connecting parents and teachers with the best books for the ups and downs of life with young children. We welcome today's guest, Sarah Winkler. Sarah is a mom to 3 amazing kids, ages 11, 8, and 6, and has been a preschool teacher for 11 years. She teaches in a lab school with an emergent curriculum, which means they build learning experiences around children's interests and ideas. She's deeply passionate about the power of learning through play, and has created a whole account dedicated to sharing hands-on learning ideas that encouraged play-based education called Pinch of Pre-K. Her mission is to inspire educators and families to embrace play as an essential part of early childhood development. This episode aligns with the Familius habits: read together and play together. You can learn more about the Familius 10 Habits of Happy Families by going to the Habit Hub blog on Familius.com. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy that you're here. As I said at the top, I was a preschool teacher before in a past life, and I love sharing all things early childhood related with our listeners because there's so much information that is available to us, especially on social media, and there's so much that's good, and there's also a lot that can get lost. So I love having another early childhood professor on here, and so I want to start with a little bit about what a lab school is for our listeners who may not be familiar with a lab school versus like a traditional early childhood program.
Yeah, absolutely. So the lab school I work at here in Kentucky, so essentially what it is we work all over the campus. So students from the child development department come down, and it's like, say it's college students, they'll come down and they'll work with our students, like our younger students, and we'll talk them through their lesson plans, or we'll work with their professors to show what our kids are interested in. Just last week I think I had 5 in my classroom, and there were some in the other rooms of our department. And they asked, okay, what are these kids interested in? We talk about it, and they come down with a lesson. Then we talk back with their professors about things that they did amazingly and some things that they could work on. And it's a really good time for them to have that hands-on experience that maybe you wouldn't get elsewhere. And I just love the fact that we are sharing our passion with these college students who have probably never been in a classroom before, especially early childhood. It is a little bit more difficult. I think they come down thinking, oh, we're just going to sit down and play. And it is so much more than that.
I think the word play in our vocabulary has taken on so many meanings. And in early childhood, it means something so much bigger than maybe what other people would necessarily associate it with. So, can you give us just more insight into why play is so important in these early childhood years?
Yes, absolutely. So I think, as you said, when people hear play, they're just like, oh, I'll be kind of hands off with it. You just go play. Or, in a classroom setting, it's not just sitting there with the kids. You have to actually talk with the kids. Something as simple as if they're building with blocks, you can say, oh, Susie, what would happen if I had, added 2 more blocks to this? How many blocks would we have then? Would the tower get taller? Would the tower get shorter? Adding meaningful conversations to the play is what makes play important. Yes, they can learn, obviously, cognitive development, social skills, language development, the emotional development, physical development, and all that. But when you're there kind of leading that is what makes it so meaningful. And the questions you ask, and how you can add math terms in, and how you can, enrich how they speak. And there's just so many things you can do with it. It's not it's just amazing how much they learn without even knowing they're learning.
Absolutely. I always like to quote Vivian Gussin Paley, who is an early childhood education giant, and she always talks about the importance of play and that play is the work of early childhood. So in the way that we are working at our jobs, um, play is the way that our kids are working, and every little piece of them is growing and developing. Um, and a lot of what they're learning, along with these, um, math and science concepts and, vocabulary, building language, there's so many social skills that
Mhm.
are developed in these early years. Um, and as an adult, I think it's really interesting to kind of re-examine the skills that are being learned. I remember I had um, a parent of a child in my classroom, and I was talking about all of these skills, and the parent said, "Well, my kid is 4 years old. They've been socialized since the day they were born." And I thought, I bet we all know some adults, maybe in our families, maybe our friends, who could probably have used a little more help with learning how to socialize with other people. and the
Yeah.
and the truth, yeah, and the truth is that social development is ongoing, as is development in the entire brain and body. So I always love to kind of bring that up because socialization at 2 and 3 years old is totally different than what it looks like in kindergarten, and
Yes.
you're laying that foundation.
Yes.
um, and that's something that I think is so important that you offer to your whole community. You're helping people create these learning experiences that are so rich in terms of what they're learning and experiencing. So can you give us of your some tips and advice about setting up these really meaningful play experiences, whether it's in the classroom or in a home?
Yes. So when my kids were younger, it was during the COVID time. So my daughter was in PT and OT and speech at this time as well. So I was having to do her OT and stuff online. So I was like, okay, what's some ways that I can do this and make it more meaningful, because she's 1, 2 years old and staring at this computer of her OT. She doesn't know what's going on. So something small that I did, I made Play-Doh. You don't have to make it. You can buy it, whatever. This was during COVID. So I just had the stuff and I made it. And I would put little toys in her Play-Doh. I would give her tongs. If they're not ready for tongs, just let them use their finger. I would have the items in it and she would pull them out. We would talk about it like, oh, you found the red bug, you found the blue horse. I would just make it more conversation with her. We were talking, she was using her hands. It wasn't just me sitting there like, okay, we were making it meaningful. At the time, he's older now, but he would come in and he would play with us. Something as easy as getting out water and putting in stuff you have around your kitchen is amazing, because you can be like, oh, I see that you're pouring the water into the blue cup. Oh, I love that shared with your brother. Can your brother have the red cup? There's just so many ways to incorporate it, and most people are doing it without even knowing it. You sit with your kids, it's gonna start happening, because they're gonna want to talk to you, and you're gonna want to talk back. As they've gotten older, something else that we've done. My mother-in-law actually came up with this idea. So again, my daughter, where she's been in all those services, she has had a little bit of trouble learning and keeping up. So something fun my mother-in-law did, she literally had DOS, and she would roll it and they would add the numbers together and turn over a paper that had a number written on it. So 2 and 3, oh, that makes 6. Let's turn it over. I know it doesn't sound like much, but she has loved that. We keep it right in here in the living room because she'll play it on her own now. We'll sit down with her and play as well. Trying to think of all the things I've done. I've done quite a bit that have just been super quick activities. Kinetic sand has been huge for us. There's a lot of things happening with that. They're squishing, they're playing, they're talking, freezing things, freezing nature. like you're exploring, you're talking about it, you're talking about what happens when I put hot water on it? What happens when I put cold water on it? What happens when I put salt on it? Like, what happens if I put sugar on it? And they're saying these things too. I'm just trying to think of a couple more things at nature walks. Just going outside walking. That is learning through play. They are walking and you're talking about the different things you see. And you can start this when they're little. Like that is one thing I've always tried really hard to do with all of my kids is talking, 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 probably to where they're like, okay, mom, that's enough. But but they all I think of course, no child is perfect, and I know that, but they do seem very well adjusted when they went to school. They seem, they were able to kind of problem solve on their own, and they were able to do these things. We talked about how to, if you need a break, you can take a break. Like say, Mom, hey, I need a second, or hey, my brother's bothering me. I need to walk away. Like so not only is it all these things I talked about, but it makes a huge foundation for their learning overall. It puts in a joy for learning. They're excited to learn. My kids come in my classroom now this year and they want to know what we're going to talk about. Oh, like a couple of weeks ago, we did shadows and I got out a projector, like the big projector. And all I did was set that out and I let them put stuff on it. We talked about what we saw. I only sat there and kind of led on their conversations, but they did kind of the learning on their own. I just simply put out flashlights and they explored shadows and we're like, whoa, it's look how much bigger it is. It goes back. And we talked about how we saw those things outside. So it doesn't have to be big, huge, elaborate activities. It can be small things. It can be things when you're getting your shoes on at the door, like, oh, hold on a second. Let me regroup. I got off track. So yeah, just any little thing that they can do is can be a learning opportunity for them and produce the growth and stuff that they need.
Absolutely. I think so much of what you talked about is really important for us to kind of keep in mind as we're creating these experiences. And it sounds like not only is there a lot of academic learning going on in these experiences, but also just tons and tons of social and emotional development. Like you said, knowing when to take a break, letting yourself
Yes.
being in touch with yourself and being able to verbalize, I need a break. That's something that I struggle with as an
Too.
adult, and such a gift of a skill to be giving to our kids. It might sound small, but as they get older and the challenges of school um,
Yeah.
increase, these are skills that are going to be so important in terms of just like self-regulation and knowing themselves. And as you were talking about the exploration with the projector and the flashlights, these are skills of scientific inquiry, right? Like you said, you're creating children who are curious and excited and interested in touching and exploring and asking questions, right? These are all skills that they are building on as that will lead up to them eventually, doing science experiments in a lab, in a classroom, in high school, and, not being curious and being interested in exploring and asking questions. These are the skills that are hard to define and hard to kind of put our finger on when they're happening in that moment, but that exploration and, like you said, that love of learning is it's something really special and something that our kids will take with them for the rest of their lives. So I'm so glad you spoke about that as well. I also these are concepts of, like, opposites, light and dark, pouring water into the cup. Oh, that cup is half full. Well, what does half mean? And what happens when I pour the liquid from the cup into a totally different cup? Well, is it still the same amount? That's the concept of displacement. So
Yeah.
yeah, these are, like you said, we're just continuing to lay this incredible foundation.
And they'll make
I
those connections. Like I I think I used to, especially when I first started teaching, was kind of like, oh, they won't get that. And that kind of hindered me some because I would literally think, oh, they're too young. They're too young. They're really not. They are like so smart and they take in everything you say, remember everything you say, especially mine.
Yes.
They remember it, right or wrong, they will remember. So,
Yes.
especially my 11-year-old, he still brings up stuff. But, that is something I think we all could do better at is they do understand a lot more than I think sometimes we give them credit for. And that is something I bring up at the beginning of every school year with parents. I'm like, I work on this social emotional and we do this play, but it is so meaningful and so important. And I will say my parents are wonderful. Once we kind of explain it, it's like it clicks like, oh, okay. We send pictures throughout the year and they're like, oh my gosh, so-and-so has never ever said anything like that or done this before. And they'll do it, given that opportunity.
Absolutely. Early childhood is an incredible time. Their brains are developing at such a rapid pace, and so much of what they're doing for the first time.
Yes.
And when it's not the first time, the repetition is where they're really absorbing and
Yeah.
exploring and getting them to the meat of those skills. So an early childhood classroom is a magical place. And it
Yes.
sounds like you're creating such a rich environment and you're helping people to bring that magic and that education and that love of learning into their home so that that's so valuable and just something so special that you're giving to us.
I like that you continuing though. Like we do for 2 weeks, we'll do a topic of exploration and we stick with that for 2 weeks. And you would be shocked at how many we go over some of the same concepts, but it sticks with their interests. Like that's what, if you don't know emergent curriculum, for anyone out there is you go based off their interests. And I mean, it could go on for 2, 4, 5 weeks, it can last for a long time, all their inquiries.
And that's great. I think one thing that, comes out of that emergent curriculum, as it does when parents are engaging with their kids at home, is helping kids to feel that their ideas and their interests have value.
Yes.
How important is that for kids to know that they are, that they are valuable, that their ideas matter, and that their questions are important, and to take those feelings of self-worth with them as they go out into the world is such an incredible gift. So yeah, it definitely sounds like magic in your classroom. As we begin to wind down, I want to make sure that our listeners can find you. So where can they find you online?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. It's Pinch Pre-K, PINCHOFPREK. I share ideas on like activities you can do. I share glimpses into my classroom. I share different toys that I found that the kids really, really enjoy and things you can just do at home. I have a really cute bunny that we share. I have a couple of those in our classroom and I bring them home every day. Those have been also a huge part of the class. So I share some of that as well. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Sarah.
Well, I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys out there got something from it.
As we conclude today's podcast, I'd like to thank Familius for their support in bringing this podcast to your ears and your heart. We'd be thrilled if you subscribed to the podcast and left us a review. And when you're ready for the next amazing book adventure, we'd be honored if you'd choose a book from Familius. One step at a time, we can make the world a happier place.